There is a man in the room. He hasn't said anything. He hasn't tried to impress anyone. He hasn't laughed the loudest, or interrupted, or performed. He is just there. And somehow, without a word, everyone in that room is aware of him. You felt this before. That quiet pull towards someone who gives away almost nothing. That strange discomfort around a person who doesn't need to explain themselves. Most people read silence as emptiness. They are wrong. And what we're going to explore today will make you rethink every silent person you've ever underestimated, and every loud one you've ever been impressed by. We live in an age of noise. Everyone is performing. Everyone is broadcasting. Their opinions, their wins, their pain, their breakfast. The world has convinced us that visibility equals value. That if you are not being heard, you are not mattering. So people talk more than they think. They react before they reflect. They fill every silence because silence makes them feel invisible, and invisibility, somewhere deep in the social brain, feels like death. But here is the truth that most people never sit with long enough to understand. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is power in its most concentrated form. Think about pressure, real pressure, the kind that breaks most people. It needs something to push against. Noise gives it that surface. Reaction gives it entry. But a person who is truly still, emotionally, psychologically, pressure finds nothing to grip. The ancient Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote in private. He didn't announce his philosophy to the empire. He thought, deeply, privately, daily, and then he led. The Tao Te Ching says, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." This is not about being cold. It is not about arrogance or suppression. It is about something far more psychologically dangerous than aggression. It is about internal authority. A man who does not need to prove himself cannot be provoked. A man who cannot be provoked cannot be controlled. And a man who cannot be controlled, in a world designed to manipulate through noise, urgency, and reaction, that man is untouchable. There is a man who has lived this truth, not as a philosophy he read, but as a reality he was forced to build. His name is Keanu Reeves. And most people think they know who he is. They know the movies, the mythology. The internet called him the nicest man in Hollywood. And they left it there, at nice. But niceness is not what makes Keanu Reeves psychologically remarkable. What makes him dangerous, in the most profound sense of that word, is what he refuses to do. There was a moment at a press event. Cameras everywhere. A journalist leaned in and asked him point blank about a painful chapter of his life. The death of his girlfriend, Jennifer Syme. Their stillborn daughter. The grief he had carried for years, quietly, while still showing up on screen, still doing his work. Most people in that position would have deflected, gotten defensive, maybe performed some public vulnerability to gain sympathy. Keanu went quiet. Not awkward quiet. Not wounded quiet. The kind of quiet that tells you the person has already been to the bottom of that pain and made peace with it, he answered calmly. Briefly. And then he moved on. No performance. No spectacle, no need for the room to validate his grief. What he revealed in that moment was a man who had processed something privately that most people would have worn publicly for years. There was another pattern, well documented by people who have worked alongside him. On film sets, Keanu does not complain. He doesn't demand. He is known for buying motorcycles for his stunt crew out of his own pocket, not posting about it, not arranging a photographer. The crew found out weeks later, almost by accident. He gives. And then he is silent about giving. Think about how rare that is. Think about how many people give precisely so they can talk about giving. What that behavior reveals is something deeply countercultural. A man completely decoupled from external validation. He doesn't need the reaction to make the action feel real. That is not niceness. That is psychological sovereignty. And then there is the most well-known dimension of his silence, his presence in public. Paparazzi have photographed Keanu riding the subway in New York, sitting beside strangers, reading. No entourage, no performance of being a celebrity who is humble about being a celebrity. Just a man, in a seat, on a train. People sit next to him and realize halfway through the ride. He doesn't announce himself. He doesn't disappear. He simply exists, fully, quietly, without apology. What that communicates, without a single word, is this: I do not need your recognition to know who I am. And that, psychologically, is one of the most powerful things a human being can project. Here is what this behavior actually reveals, beneath the surface. Most people operate from a place of psychological scarcity. They talk because silence feels like loss. They react because stillness feels like weakness. They perform because they are constantly measuring their worth against the response they receive from the outside world. This is not a character flaw. It is the result of a social conditioning that begins in childhood. We are rewarded for performance. Good grades announced at dinner, achievements displayed on walls, social approval tied directly to how well we present ourselves. Over time, the self becomes dependent on reflection. We need to see ourselves in other people's eyes to feel real. The silent man has broken that dependency, and this is why he is psychologically dangerous. Not because he is threatening, but because he cannot be manipulated through the tools that control most people. You cannot destabilize someone with disapproval if they have stopped requiring approval. You cannot provoke someone into reaction if they have learned to let pressure pass through them, like wind through an open window. You cannot read someone who does not perform, and what you cannot read, you instinctively respect. Fear, even, because the unknown has always carried more psychological weight than the familiar. Most people think silence is something you retreat into when you have nothing to say. But the truth is, silence is what you grow into when you finally have enough of yourself that you no longer need to borrow confidence from the room. Watch what happens in an argument between two people. One of them raises their voice, gets louder, more emphatic, repeating the same point with more intensity, as if volume will do what logic cannot. The other goes quieter, not shut down, not defeated, quieter. And something strange happens in that moment. The louder person starts to feel exposed, because suddenly their noise is just noise, and the silence on the other side is a mirror. The person who needs the argument to end is the person who loses the argument, and the person who doesn't need it to end, who is perfectly comfortable sitting in the discomfort, controls the entire emotional landscape of that room. Now take that same dynamic to daily life. Someone doesn't respond immediately to a message. The other person spirals. What did I say? Are they angry? Did I do something wrong? They send a follow-up. Then another. One person is stable. The other is chasing stability from outside themselves. One person is grounded. The other is orbiting someone else's silence, desperate to fill it. That is what psychological weight looks like in ordinary life. And most of us have been on the wrong side of it more than we want to admit. Here is what I want you to sit with. You have been taught, your whole life, that being seen is the same as mattering. That impact requires noise. That influence requires performance. That love, respect, and power all demand expression to be real. But consider the most powerful forces in nature. Gravity doesn't announce itself. It just holds. The deepest ocean water makes no sound. It simply carries everything. The roots of the oldest trees are invisible, buried, silent, and responsible for everything above the surface. Depth does not perform, it sustains. And the men who understand this, the ones who have stopped explaining themselves, stopped defending themselves, stopped seeking permission from the crowd to feel worthy, those are the ones who quietly reshape everything around them. Not through force, not through volume, but through the sheer gravitational weight of a self that is fully settled. You feel it when you're near them. You can't quite name it. You call it charisma, or presence, or confidence. But what it really is, what you're actually responding to, is the rare sensation of being near someone who is completely, terrifyingly at home inside themselves. And somewhere inside you, something recognizes it. Because somewhere inside you, that is exactly where you are trying to get. Silence is not a strategy. You cannot decide to become silent and expect the world to suddenly feel it. Silence is a consequence. The natural byproduct of a man who has stopped needing things from people that he should have been giving himself all along. The validation, the approval, the constant confirmation that he exists and matters. When you stop chasing those things, not because you suppress the desire, but because you have genuinely filled that space from within, silence stops being uncomfortable. It becomes your natural state. And the world, instinctively, without being told, adjusts to you. Not because you demanded it, not because you performed for it, but because there is something in the human animal that recognizes stillness as strength, that reads calm as capability, that responds to rootedness the way water responds to gravity, by moving toward it. Keanu Reeves didn't become psychologically compelling by trying to seem a certain way. He became it by living through things that could have broken him, and choosing, again and again, to process privately give quietly, and exist without apology. That is the architecture of a dangerous man. Not dangerous because he threatens, dangerous because he cannot be shaken. And in a world that profits from your instability, an unshakable man is the most radical thing there is. Before you move on, I want you to do something. Don't comment yet. Just think for a moment. Think about the last time you filled a silence, with words, with reaction, with explanation, when you didn't actually need to. When something in you couldn't tolerate just being still and saying nothing. What were you afraid the silence would say about you? When you have an honest answer, drop it below. Not a performance, not a curated response. The real one. Because that moment you're thinking of right now, that is where this conversation actually begins. And if you've ever been around someone like this, someone whose silence you could feel before they spoke, someone who made you more aware of your own noise just by being still near you, tell me about that person. You don't have to name them. Just describe what it felt like. Because I think more people have experienced this than have ever put it into words. And putting it into words, right here, might be the first time you truly understand what you were actually in the presence of. And if any part of this raised a question, if something didn't sit right, or opened a door you're not sure how to walk through, ask it below. Not rhetorically, actually ask. Because there are layers to this that a single video cannot carry. That is why the ebook is in the description, but it is not for everyone. And if enough of you ask the right questions, the next conversation we have might go somewhere neither of us expected. Most people will finish this video and move on. They'll feel something for a few minutes, that quiet shift in the chest, and then the feed will pull them somewhere louder. Something easier, something that doesn't ask anything of them. And that's fine. But some of you, a few, will carry this differently. You'll notice the next time you rush to fill a silence. You'll catch yourself performing calm instead of being it. You'll start to feel the difference between a man who is quiet because he has nothing to say, and one who is quiet because he has already said everything to himself that matters. If you're in that second group, stay close, because what comes next in this series was built for exactly that kind of mind. The ones who don't just watch, but notice.